والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So last time we stopped by verse number 41 of Surah Maryam. Inshallah we'll proceed now.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا إذ قال لأبيه يا أبت لم تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا.
Well done. This anka, what is it? The one followed by a kaf. What is that? Ikhfa. Now. Do you guys remember what we said regarding those 4 rules? Okay. Now.
يا أبت إني قد جاءني من العلم ما لم يأتك فاتبعني أهدك صراطا سويا.
صراطا
سويا. يا أبت لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا. يا أبت إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا.
طيب عليك إن شاء الله. أحمد.
قال أراغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم لئن لم تنتهي لأرجمنك واهجرني مليا. قال سلام عليك سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا. وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون بدعاء ربي شقيا. فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا لهم إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا. ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا.
طيب عليك. أيها من البداية.
واذكر في الكتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا إذ قال لأبيه يا أبت لم تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا. يا أبت إني قد جاءني من العلم ما لم يأتك فاتبعني أهدك صراطا سويا. يا أبت لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا. يا أبت إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا.
فتح الله لك. أحمد.
قال أراغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم لئن لم تنتهي لأرجمنك واهجرني مليا. قال سلام عليك سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا. وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون بدعاء ربي شقيا.
فلما اعتزلهم
وما يعبدون من دون الله
وهبنا له
إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا.
فتح الله لك إبراهيم. نعم.
يا أبدي شوفوا في يا
نعم. It's optional. نعم. نعم. Ibrahim, would you like to? At some point, inshallah, we cover the different types of mudud, inshallah. We just want to focus for now on the nun sakna wa tanween. Ibrahim. واذكر في الكتاب إذ قال لأبيه يبصر يغني جاءني فاتبعني عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا. فتح الله لك يا إبراهيم. ما شاء الله. Very good. أحمد. Excellent. Abu. صديق. الله يفتح عليك يا عمرو. قدام. اسماعيل, would you like to recite? Up to you. I mean, if you don't prefer, it's fine.
I can try it.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
I might be very slow.
Take your time. راغب راغب
إن أنت إبراهيم لئن لم تنتهي جملك
واهجرني 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 مليا مليا.
قال سلام
عليك عليك
عليك
عليك أستغفر ربي
إنه كان. Which one is this letter? After كان
بي حفية. Yep.
كان بي
حفية. Well done, yes, Mike. ما شاء الله. Very good. Very good. حافظ. نعم.
وأعتزلك وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون بدعاء ربي شقيا. فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا.
الله يفتح عليك. حافظ. From the sister's side. صديقا. Well done, Yali. Any other citers? أراغب واهجرني سأستغفر سأستغفر
لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى ألا أكون
بدعائي
ربي شقيا فلما أتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا له إسحاق
ويعقوب
وكلا جعلنا نبيا ووهبنا لهم من رحمتنا وجعلنا لهم لسان صدق عليا.
Well done, يعني ما شاء الله. Any other reciters? Okay. Just a quick translation of the passage. As we said, one of the key differences, when you look at books of tafsir, often this surah would be seen primarily to be a surah about the disbelievers, addressing them, as in reminding them of the destiny of the previous generations when they rejected their prophets and this and that, which is not the approach that we take here. It doesn't have to be, of course, it doesn't have to be a mutually exclusive thing. But what we think is that this chapter is primarily to address the psychological state of the Prophet ﷺ, and is not primarily about the community of disbelievers. So after the Quran mentions the story of Zakaria alayhi salam, and the story of Maryam and Isa alayhi salam, it moves now to Ibrahim as another example of a person whom Allah had not left alone when he migrated and left his people after they rejected his message. And in this particular moment, the Quran moves us a little bit, to a situation of a very close relative to a prophet, to give a sense of comfort to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ of the amount of rejection that he received, be it from the community or from his closest relatives. Allah is reminding the Prophet ﷺ of a different type of difficulty, that is a relative who is rejecting you, and that is your own father. And the idea behind this is to emphasize how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not leave Ibrahim alone when he was absolutely committed. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. And remember, in our book, Ibrahim alayhi salam, إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. Indeed, he was a man of truth, and he was a prophet. So the first thing that strikes us here is the word is the word Siddiq. And Siddiq, in Arabic we call it Sighat al-Mubalagha. Which is basically a form of intensity, to emphasize the intensity of something. You know, we say someone is truthful. If we say Fulanun Sadiq, someone is truthful. If we say Siddiq, it means he is excessively and intensively truthful. So Siddiq comes in the form of fa'il. You know, in Arabic morphology, there is something called al-awzan, the forms. One of those forms is this form, fa'il. If something comes in the form of fa'il, like Siddiq or Quddis, it means they are intensively holy or intensively truthful. And it has to do with two things. It's not just about saying the truth or telling the truth, but also about believing everything that is truthful, being open to believing anything that is truthful. So it's about, you know, what you say is truthful, and what you receive is truthful. So both ways. That is as-siddiq. That's why a man of truth would be probably the closest translation to this. And then you have the word nabiyya. Of course, we have different forms of balagha, different forms of intensity in the Quran. We don't have the time to go through this. But one of those is fa'il. We have the word nabi. What does nabi mean? Prophet. And we have another word, so nabi is prophet. What is another word that we have in the Quran? Rasul. What does Rasul mean? Messenger. Does anyone know the difference between those two? The Nabi and the Rasul? Yes.
I know there's a certain prophet, like for example, a prophet can be a messenger, a messenger cannot be a prophet, but I don't know what to say. But
Okay, I know what you mean. That's
for example, like Isa was a prophet and a messenger.
That's true.
But like some in the Quran, we don't have all the prophets together.
Exactly. Some scholars in the Islamic tradition argue that there is no difference between the Nabi and the messenger and the prophet. That's the Mu'tazili school. But the most dominant approach, the most dominant school would say there is a difference. Nabi is a little bit lower than a Rasul. The prophet is a little bit lower than a messenger in the sense that a messenger is often someone who's received revelation from Allah. But he also, and then they start to differ. He might have a book, like the Prophet Muhammad has the Quran, Isa has the Injil, Musa has the Torah. So these are prophets, these are messengers. So messengerhood or being a messenger is higher than being a prophet. These are linguistic differences. You know, there is a space for both interpretation. Both interpretations are very plausible. To me, the way I look at it, I see that I don't see it as intrinsically different. I just think of the two words as being two sides of the same coin. As in, Nabi is one dimension of a relationship with Allah. Rasul is a different dimension. Nabi comes from, Nabi in Arabic comes in the form of fa'il. Like Nabi is someone who has been informed by Allah. So Nabi is primarily to do with the Prophet's relationship with Allah. So he is Nabi in terms of his relationship with Allah. Rasul is in his relationship with the people. So the Rasul carries them. So it's the same person, right? But Nabi is primarily about the relation, that person's relationship with Allah is called Nubuwwah. Allah anba'ahu. Risala is when he moves to transmit this to the people. So just two different dimensions of the same person. So I don't see it as intrinsically different. And why? It's simply because the Quran, okay, the most dominant interpretation says the difference between the Prophet and the Messenger is that the Messenger would have a book, but the Prophet doesn't have one. According to the Quran, this is not a consistent interpretation. Let me give you an example. كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين. Allah had sent prophets as givers of good news and as warners. That is Risala. And they can't do this without having a book. It could be the book of someone else, but this is a bit of a remote view. So it remains one of those areas in the Quran that are open to different views. Yes?
Is there a difference between the word Naba and the word Risala?
Naba is often applied to a piece of news that is truthful. Correct. But Risala can be both. Yeah, as in the Risala at essence can be something correct and truthful and can also be a false one. When Allah says, when the Prophet says, فِيهِ نَبَأُ مَا قَبْلَكُمْ, the Quran has the naba of the people who were before you. As the true news of the people who were before you. So the word naba means it's a truthful one.
What about Risala? Risala has to be a book?
Risala linguistically can apply to anything. And in the Risalatul Lak, I have a message for you. So linguistically it is open. But if I say Rasul, of course Rasul wouldn't lie. A messenger would not lie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Risala is the bigger umbrella, and then Naba would go.
Nabi would be a bigger one, because the Risala is a particular one. From that perspective, yes. From that perspective, yes, you're right. Yeah. So إنه كان صديقا نبيا إذ قال لأبيه يا أبت لما تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا. When he said to his father, "Oh my beloved father, why do you worship something that can neither hear nor see nor benefit you in any way?" يا أبت إني قد جاءني من العلم ما لم يأتك فاتبعني أهدك صراطا سويا. Oh my beloved father, knowledge has come to me that did not come to you. So follow me, I will guide you to the straight path. To a straight path. يا أبت لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا. My beloved father, do not worship the shaitan, as it has always been rebellious against Allah. يا أبت إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من الرحمن فتكون للشيطان وليا. My beloved father, I fear that a punishment from Allah, from the Lord of mercy, may afflict you, may touch you. And that you may become one of the, companions of the shaitan, or the followers of the shaitan, of his party. قال راغب أنت عن آلهتي يا إبراهيم لئن لم تنتهي لأرجمنك واهجرني مليا. His father answered, Ibrahim, how dare you reject my gods? I will stone you if you do not stop this. Keep out of my way. قال سلام عليك. Ibrahim said, peace be with you. سأستغفر لك ربي إنه كان بي حفيا. I will beg my Lord to forgive you. He's always been gracious to me. وأعتزلكم وما تدعون من دون الله وأدعو ربي عسى أن لا أكون بدعاء ربي شقيا. For now I will leave you alone with you idols and what you worship. وأدعو ربي, and I will pray for my Lord, and I'm absolutely certain that my prayers will not go to waste. فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله, the moment he left them and what they worship besides Allah, وهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب, we granted him Isaac and Jacob. وَكُلًّا جَعَلْنَا نَبِيًّا, and we made them both prophets. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُم مِّن رَحْمَتِنَا وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ عَلِيًّا, and we granted them our grace and we gave them an excellent reputation, a noble reputation. I'll give you 2 minutes to do some sort of silent reflection in this passage. You know, to share something that you find striking, puzzling, anything that you want to react to, so to speak. Okay. Yes, yeah.
Just I like how this is really striking for me, how it starts the structuring of it. So first, if قال لي يا أبتي لم لا تعبد ما أعبد, he's asking him to reason what's the, like why you're doing what you're on. Then he gives that an evidence by explaining what is it. Then he evaluates if you go on this path, you're on the wrong path. So he doesn't just tell him like you're wrong, leave this.
Absolutely.
He tells him like
structure.
slowly and structure. Why not to do this? And going slowly with him, not like his fault, so I'm being really like being so humble here to his dad, even though he's on the wrong path.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also after all this, he explains it, and his dad says like go away. He still says like peace be upon you. He didn't like you do anything to his father. There is a big, I think, for me that I learned from is like just being humble and being nice, no matter like what is it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a lot to unpack here, indeed. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's a celebrated figure in Christianity, in Judaism and Islam, obviously. Actually, today the concept of Abrahamic religions often applies to Muslims, Christians, and Jews, mainly because they all appreciate Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim in the Torah, Ibrahim in the Gospel, is often celebrated for his faith, the depth of his faith, and the depth of his trust in Allah. The Quran introduces Ibrahim alayhi salam, yes, as someone who is deep in his faith, but primarily as someone who is very logical and as a man of reasoning, a man of intellect. His trust comes across definitely. But the key word that is here across the Quran in describing Ibrahim alayhi salam would often be the logicality of his arguments, structure of his thought. He's been introduced as a philosopher. Actually, in Taha Abdul Rahman's, the contemporary Moroccan philosopher, his most recent book is called As-Sira al-Falsafiyya. He actually introduces Ibrahim alayhi salam as a prophet philosopher because of the structure of his arguments and how he makes how he structures his claims. And that is, of course, that goes in line with the amount of emphasis that the Quran in and of itself places on criticality and on reasonableness and this and that. And honestly, the first thing that really struck me about this passage is what I may call the form of it, how this is structured. In today's if you're doing a philosophy class or a logic class, there is something called justification. When you make a claim, you have to justify your claim. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is inviting, he says, I have a Lord, and I'm inviting my father to worship this Lord. Then you need to justify why this is a true Lord, why should I worship him? And this justification area, I mean, if you look it up on Google, you'll find that there's huge literature on it, on what makes a justifiable claim, what makes a valid claim. People would use different ways of justification. So you have the most famous one is what do you call argument from evidence. Argument from evidence, where you primarily, I mean, in very broad terms, you either have a logical evidence or an empirical evidence. Okay? And you have what is called argument from first principles. You know, you understand what logical is about, like empirical. Argument from first principles is famously known as foundationalism. So what happens here is that you really come to analyze the first principles, the fundamental pieces of the claim you're making. For example, you're saying, whatever you may have in mind. With this argument from first principles, you take me back to the earliest stages of forming this argument. I formed this argument or claim on the basis of 1, 2, 3. The argument from first principles goes back to those 3 principles and examines those, sharpens those 3 or 2 foundations. That's why it's called foundationalism. It looks at the foundations of an argument, from first principles. And there is also argument from authority. Argument from authority. When someone makes a claim, for example, on the basis of his expertise, when you look at the person who says something, you know, believe this because I said it. Who am I? Might be a scholar, might be this, might be that. Right? That's a type of justification. There is also another famous one, argument from consensus. When I'm telling you something, you say, you know, but all the people believe otherwise. That is argument from consensus. What people agree on. Right? These are the most famous types of argument. Obviously, the highest of which are these 2. argument from evidence. You either give me a logical argument, or an empirical one that I can see, I can touch, or someone that I can really reason with. Which is Ibrahim alayhi salam is beginning with. يا أبت لما تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر ولا يغني عنك شيئا. You know, our conception of what a God is, why do we worship gods to begin with? First of all, ideally we should worship gods because if they are worthy of worship, we should be worshipping them no matter what. Whether they are helping us, benefiting us, harming us. But because we as humans, we always, you know, when we think of God, we often take some sort of functional understanding of God. As in, we look at how do they relate to us. You take a God as a God because you believe they might benefit you or they might harm you. That is the vast majority of human beings. Otherwise, that's why we say, La ilaha illallah. There is no God that is worthy of being worshipped. Because Allah is worthy of being worshipped. Whether we worship Him, we haven't worshipped Him, He and Himself is worthy of being worshipped. But because as humans, we are somehow, you know, bound to think in those terms. You become so committed to someone, either because they benefit you, or they might be able to harm you. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is really going to the deepest level of it. Why would you worship a God that is neither beneficial, can't benefit you, nor can it harm you? وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَسْمَعْ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ. It doesn't see. It doesn't see. You know, if you're going through a difficult time, it doesn't see you because it's an idol. I mean, remember Ibrahim's father is an idol, not just an idol worshiper, he was an idol maker. So he says that he doesn't see you. It doesn't hear you if you pray to them, they don't hear you. وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا. And therefore they can't really benefit you in any way. They can't stop anyone or anything from harming you. So your worship of that thing is pointless. That is argument from evidence. That is a logical evidence. But also Ibrahim alayhi salam is making an argument from first principles. Again, going back to the earlier point I was making. You worship something either because it's he's going back to the idea of why am I worshipping something? There are people that worship Allah because He is worthy of being worshipped, because He is true. God is true. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is literally taken his father to the most common denominator that people would have. He's going to the first principles. He doesn't that God does not see, does not hear, and it can't benefit, it can't do anything. That is an argument from first principles. And what we realize is that in the next verse, Ibrahim alayhi salam moves to somehow an argument from authority. He says, يَا أَبَتِ إِنِّي قَدْ جَاءَنِي مِنَ الْعِلْمِ مَا لَمْ يَأْتِكَ فَاتَّبِعْنِي أَهْدِكَ صِرَاطًا سَوِيًّا. Don't you realize that I've been given a very specific knowledge that you did not get? So follow me. The Quran is not a big fan of arguments from authority. But why does Ibrahim alayhi salam use it? Why, first of all, why does the Quran frown upon arguments from authority? Because everyone can use it. Everyone can use it, for whatever reason they might have. The Quran encourages critical thinking. And if it does that, it means it is asking you to really use your mind. The question that remains is are arguments from authority justifiable? Are they good arguments or not? They should not be used as primary arguments. If someone's key argument is follow me because I am more knowledgeable, don't take it from them. But it might help as a secondary type of support, as a secondary evidence, as a secondary argument. There are people that believe in authorities. If you look at the entirety of the Muslim world, how many Muslims engage with the Quran as such, and how many Muslims would say, I believe this because this sheikh or that scholar said such and such. millions upon millions of Muslims would say, I believe this because this, my favorite sheikh said it. Right? It's a reality. So it works with certain people. But there are those two conditions to it. For it to be an effective type of argument. First, it has to be a secondary one, not a primary one. The second point is that it has to be relevant. If Ibrahim is saying, follow me because I'm a carpenter, I mean, how does it relate? It has to be relevant. So Ibrahim is saying, I have a specific knowledge that hasn't been given to you to do with God. I have received revelation. So in this domain, it's my field. Right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam is actually fulfilling those two dimensions of it. He's using it after those two stronger ones. He did not begin by saying, Ya abati inni qad ja'ani min al-'ilm, follow me. I have been given knowledge, just follow me. No, he began with evidence. He began with first principles. Argument, then what we have, what is remaining is argument from consensus. That is a very contentious one. That is a very contentious one. And the Quran is more negative of it than being positive. Who is using this one? Yes, it is Ibrahim's father. أَرَاغِبٌ أَنْتَ عَنْ آلِهَتِي يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ Are you rejecting my aliha? In which all people believe. You are the one who is being the exception here. You're going against the consensus. This argument cannot stand against those. Right? And the Quran is always critical of this. Ibrahim's people, they often used that argument for consensus. قالوا وجدنا, when Ibrahim said to them, إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما هذه التماثيل التي أنتم لها عاكفون قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين. We grew up, we found our fathers and forefathers worshiping. So we're following this consensus. What does Ibrahim say? لقد كنتم أنتم وآباؤكم في ضلال مبين أجئتنا بالحق أم أنتم اللاعبين بل ربكم رب السماوات. That's an empirical evidence. Look at the رب السماوات والأرض الذي فطرهن وأنا على ذلك من الشاهدين. Right? And he shows them how those idols, when he broke them down, how they can't be of any use. You don't benefit, you don't harm. He's going them again, taking them back to arguments from evidence, arguments from first principles. And those arguments from first principles, we literally will forget them easily. Especially when we, stop thinking critically. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, in his unbelievable usage of reasoning, and in that sort of ascendancy, like beginning with his trying literally everything with his father. Argument from first principles, argument from logic, and in Surah Al-Anbiya even argument from empirical argument, and we have argument from authority, fulfilling its both dimensions. He is an authority because he is a prophet, he received that knowledge, and he is using it as a secondary one, not as a... And often, argument from authority works with people who don't use their reasoning. Literally, just try this. As a last resort. But unfortunately, it has become the most dominant approach today in many Muslims' minds. Just believe this because my sheikh said it. Right? And even, I mentioned this before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not use this, even though He is the most authoritative. Who can be more authoritative than Allah? But Allah reasons with us. Look at this, look at that. If there is someone who is entitled to be saying, believe this because I said it, it is Allah. Because no one else had claimed that we have created the heavens and the earth. No one in history claimed that we have created the heavens and the earth. Literally no one. But Him. So if someone is entitled to this, it should be Allah. He does not use it. He rather begins with First principles. Look at this, look at the skies, look at the heavens, look at this, look at that. To use logical, empirical, first principles, everything. Right? So, how, indeed, Ahmad, how Ibrahim alayhi salam structures his thought, moving from, A, B, T, C, and that. Who's next? Any other thoughts? Yes. Yes. Now.
I wonder if the first قال بأبي لا لما تعبد ما لا يسمع. I wonder if that's first principles, and then if يا أبتي لا تعبد الشيطان إن الشيطان كان للرحمن عصيا is from evidence, because one, like you said, he's kind of destructing the idea of a God and kind of going down to the very fundamentals of an idea of a God and showing that this God does not apply. But then he uses argument from authority. But then he says, لا تعبد الشيطان. Well, it's not maybe directly empirical evidence, but it's almost evidence for why you shouldn't. It's not kind of from first principles that you wouldn't worship the shaitan, but rather because he disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That is what they call argument from reasoning. I'm giving you a reason why you should not be of that party. I should have added this action. Argument from reasoning. When you give reasons for what you claim. Yes, absolutely. Well, that's actually a different type of argument. Argument from reasoning, indeed. Indeed. Yes, stop.
I was just going to say to the same point. The word lima, literally changing one letter.
Absolutely.
From me to alif. So instead of lima, if you change it to la ta'bud ma la yasma wa la yubsir. Which is exactly what he had in mind, which is what he,
absolutely.
his message.
Absolutely.
But changing it.
You see, that's a very, very interesting point.
And changing the argument from authority to evidence.
Indeed. Indeed. Moving from lima. Sorry, he does not say لا تعبد ما لا يسمع. She lima. That is why. The question of why. We often emphasize the question of why. I have an article coming up, inshallah, probably this month, hopefully, on how the Quran can be used as a living philosophy, and it's literally on that. How the Quran uses arguments like these, provoking. Imagine if he comes to his dad saying لا تعبد الشيطان, beginning with لا. Doesn't make much sense, because you wouldn't use that sort of imperative form. Don't do this, don't do that. You wouldn't really respond to such types of claims. But now he's actually asking to think. Why? Why would you worship something that does not see, does not hear? So indeed, the preposition lima, why? A very key preposition.
Any other language, you can do this with any other language. Literally change one letter to completely.
Probably. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Speak to the kind of philosopher nature. It's almost like the way that Socrates was reported teaches students the idea of getting them to get to the conclusions almost by questions.
Indeed.
Give me a reason kind of thing. Let's think about it.
We call it التوليد, generating التهكم والتوليد. Generating ideas through questions. You must just pose questions in a rhetorical way. Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah, Ahmed.
One thing that struck me was the يا أبتي إني أخاف أن يمسك عذاب من رحمك فتكون للشيطان وليا. I feel like that فتكون للشيطان وليا was a result of غضب ربنا أو عذاب from God. And I feel like this it shows more that the shaitan does not have control for you to be believed. It's rather as a result of God's being غضب عليه or عذاب from God.
So your point is that shaitan has no authority over us. And that it's us who choose those
Yes, and then
paths.
it's a result of
Our own choices. Absolutely. Absolutely. The Quran, Surah Ibrahim makes this very clear. قال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق وعدتكم فأخلفتكم وما كان لي عليكم من سلطان. I had no authority over you. Absolutely. Liam. What is striking about this here? Okay, what does that say about Ibrahim alayhi salam? And after, even after he left them, if he still makes dua for them, if he still says, I will ask my Lord to forgive you, what does that say about Ibrahim? Is he arrogant? Or is he being kind? Is he being... Yeah, absolutely. His father is turning him away, and yet he says, I will still make dua for you. May Allah forgive you for that. Absolutely. That's a very interesting point, really. I will still make dua for you. Indeed. And in the Quran, I often mention this hadith because it's very foundational. When the Prophet ﷺ, after they had captives from the battle of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ was consulting the Sahaba as to what to do with those captives. Do we kill them or do we free them? What do we do with them? The vast majority of the Sahaba, they said, whenever the Prophet ﷺ turns to one of them, they would say, kill them. Those people, they have harmed us, they have driven us out of our houses, they have done this, they have done that. And the Prophet ﷺ was not happy with those proposals. Why? Because Allah said, Allah had made him rahmatan lil alameen, a mercy to all the worlds. So he wasn't happy with those proposals. Until he moved towards Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And Abu Bakr قال يا رسول الله أهلك أهلك. They remain your family, they remain your people. So show mercy to them. The Prophet ﷺ became so happy. You could tell from his face that he was happy with this proposal, just because this is the essence of his character, rahmah wal lutf, wal gentleness. And then he said, the two key guys here were Umar and Abu Bakr. And you can imagine that Umar was the harsher one here. He says, slaughter them, they have done this, they have done that, they are worthy of the punishment. The Prophet ﷺ turned to them both and he said, إن مثلك يا عمر كمثل نوح إذ قال رب لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا. Your example, Ya Umar, is the example of Nuh alayhi salam when he made dua against his own people. After he spent with them 950 years and barely some of them accepted his message. He ended up making dua against them. Right? He says, wipe them, my Lord, wipe them out of the face of the earth. وإن مثلك يا عمر كمثل موسى إذ قال ربنا اطمس على أموالهم واشدد على قلوبهم فلا يؤمنوا حتى يروا العذاب الأليم. The same thing, Musa alayhi salam, the same dua against his own people, against the pharaohs. Destroy the wealth and place covers in the hearts that they might not really listen to the guidance you've given them. فَلَا يُؤْمِنُوا حَتَّى يَرَوْا الْعَذَابَ الْأَلِيمَ. So that they don't end up believing until they really get to see the consequences of what they have done. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling Umar that there are examples like you who think in this way. Then he turned to Abu Bakr and he said, Ya Abu Bakr, وَإِنَّ مِثْلَكَ كَمِثْلِ عِيسَى إِذْ قَالَ. And your example is like the example of Jesus. When he said, after that famous conversation between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within Surah Al-Ma'idah, he said, إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. If you choose to punish them, these are your servants, or your worshippers. If you choose to forgive them, you have a hikmah behind this, you have a wisdom behind this. I might not have access to it, but it's your call, it's not my call. And then he says, وَإِنَّ مِثْلَكَ كَمِثْلِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. And your other example is the example of Ibrahim. When he said, فَمَنْ تَبِعَنِي فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي وَمَنْ عَصَانِي فَإِنَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. As for the one who follows me, he is part of me. The ones who turn away from me, the ones who disobey me, I hope you forgive them. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيُلَيِّنُ قُلُوبَ رِجَالٍ فِي حَتَّى تَكُونَ أَبْيَضًا مِنَ اللَّبَنِ. That Allah softens the hearts of certain people in the cause of Allah until the hearts become, softer than milk or purer than milk. وَإِنَّهُ لَيُشَدِّدُ قُلُوبَ رِجَالٍ فِيهِ حَتَّى تَكُونَ أَشَدَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارِ. And He hardens the hearts of certain other people until it becomes, harder than rocks. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that we have psychological states, and everyone has his own world inside. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, of course you can tell that the Prophet ﷺ is siding with Ibrahim here, and he is siding with Abu Bakr because they are of that nature, and that's what we should aim to be. That's if our Prophet chooses this path, we're meant to be in his example, right? And he is saying, "Sa'astaghfiru laka Rabbi." I'll make dua for you using my close relationship with Allah. He كان بي حفيظ. He's been looking after me. Well, thank you, Alim, for that. Ahmed Chaban.
Some very similar points to what you and me just said, but the fact that it's also the way just the sort of dialogue is so sort of it's like such a nice dialogue. It's again Rahman. We said sort of the theme was Rahman, God, but also you can see this embodied sort of in some ways in Ibrahim, sort of in the way he's sort of speaking to his dad and the sort of the words he's using, and also asking for forgiveness after he's been rejected and stuff. Even like his dad's basically threatening to stone him, and at that point he's like, okay, I'm risking my life if I have to leave. But even then he leaves it with peace and begs for forgiveness after. So also in this sort of time, I guess it also could be a reminder to the people that are following the Prophet in the sort of the early days, the rough days, that having issues with their parents, stuff like that. Reminder for them that this is sort of a role model that you can take, someone who had also severe problems with his parents, with his dad, being a strongest believer and a big person in the community, a biggest believer. So
That's an excellent point, yeah.
Try to sort of follow his example in that sort of way.
An excellent point. We see this very commonly with newcomers to Islam, converts. They would often have issues with the families, mainly because they don't follow this approach. Approach of gentleness, the approach of mercy, the approach of dialogue. When the Quran is far from using that. Actually, Ibrahim only left them when his father said, "No, I don't even want to see you." Right? And the Quran emphasizes this in other places. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Even if your parents are mushriks, are not believers, you're meant to still stay in good company with them. Absolutely. I mean, personally, that's another thing that strikes me about this passage. Using that word, Ya Abati. It does not just mean my father's mean my beloved father. Ya Abati. And that teaches us so many things about the ethics of giving advice. A very tricky situation. It's your father, who's publicly seen as a public figure as well. How do I give advice with that? So that sense of sincerity that you really see it in that usage of the word Ya Abati, not just once, or twice, or thrice, or 4 to 5 times. He repeats this word. He repeats this for a good reason, for us to really observe what you say when you come to give advice. That's a very essential thing. Sometimes, literally one word can change the whole message. And in certain places, if you are blunt, it does go away with the point you want to make. Because you need to really prepare me for this. Prepare me to really listen to your advice. Ibrahim alayhi salam is teaching us this. How do I prepare my father? Remind him that my advice is sincere. So he matters to me. The Prophet ﷺ often used this. In several hadiths. Top of my mind, there is his hadith with Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. Mu'adh, the Prophet ﷺ said, أخذ بيدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet took me from my hand. And he said, يا معاذ إني أحبك. يا معاذ, I love you. Mu'adh said, وأنا والله أحبك يا رسول الله. By Allah, I love you. The Prophet ﷺ said, وإني أعلمك كلمات تقولهن في دبر كل صلاة. A couple of words I want to tell you that for you to repeat after every prayer. لبيك يا رسول الله, I am at your service. And then he taught him to say, after each prayer, اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. Allah, help me to remember you, to be thankful to you, and to worship you in the best possible way. The same thing that he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the famous hadith with Abu Dhar. When Abu Dhar said, Ya Rasulullah, ألا تستعملني, don't you take me, put me as a ruler over a specific, or give me a position of leadership. The Prophet said, Ya Abu Dhar, إني أحب لك ما أحب لنفسي. I love for you what I love for myself. وإني أراك ضعيفا, but I really think you are weak for this. Do not overburden yourself with this. Right? ولا تأمرن على مال يتيم. So don't even aspire to take a leading position. Don't even take a position of guardianship over an orphan, because it's beyond you. You're too weak. ولا تولين بين اثنين, and do not be a judge or a referee between two people. That's beyond you. And then he said, وإنها يوم القيامة خزي وندامة. On the day of judgment, it becomes a cause of shame and a cause of regret. إلا من أخذها بحقها, except for the people that really treat it properly. So the Prophet ﷺ really used this. So how do I prepare? The psychology of the person I'm talking to before I give an advice. Literally one word can either make or break in the way you phrase what you want to say. يا أبت لما تعبد ما لا يسمع ولا يبصر. And the Prophet ﷺ said, إني أحبك. And so many hadiths, many encounters between the Prophet and the companions. The man who said, Ya Rasulullah, either me fi zina, allow me to commit fornication, calmly and handle the situation. Even more than that, that companion who came, جاء عربي فبال في المسجد. Can you imagine someone coming to and urinated in the masjid? And the hadith says, فَهَمَّ بِهِ النَّاسِ. The Sahaba, they all went, they stood up, they want to take him out. He's an Arabi, he's a Bedouin, he doesn't know the ethics of the masjid. The Prophet says, دعوه, leave him alone. وَهَرِيقُ عَلَى بَوْلِهِ سَجْلًا مِنْ مَاءٍ أَوْ ذَنُوبًا مِنْ مَاءٍ. Just leave him, get some water, a bucket of water, and that's it. Clean it up. فَإِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُمْ مُيَسِّرِينَ وَلَمْ تُبْعَثُوا مُعَسِّرِينَ. Allah sent you as causes of ease, not causes of difficulties. So the medium, the way that you may give an advice matters. And also, he's not giving him an advice in public. That's not a public conversation. That is a personal conversation he is having with his father. Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu had famously said, تعمدني بنصحك في انفرادي وجنبني النصيحة في الجماعة. If you want to give me advice, give it to me in private. And do not give it to me in public. فإن النصح بين الناس ضرب من التوبيخ لا أرض استماع. Because giving advice in public is a type of slandering and defaming. They wouldn't be happy to listen to. فإن خالفتني وعصيت أمري فلا تجزع إذا لم تعط طاعة. But if you choose otherwise, don't be sad when I don't listen to you. Why? Simply because, when we are in public, it's my reputation, it's my identity, it's my ego. The shaitan finds millions of ways to intervene when you're in public. Again, the Quran advises the Prophet ﷺ, if you want to talk to them in private, so that they may get a chance to reason. When you are in public, you are so worried for so many things. It's reputation, it's ego, it's this, it's that. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is having a private conversation with his father. And you could sense the sense of sincerity in it. He's not showing off, he's not. And even the language, again the language, he's not saying to his father, إِنِّي قَدْ جَاءَنِي مِنَ الْعِلْمِ مَا لَمْ يَأْتِكَ فَاتَّبِعْنِي. You're such a stupid or an ignorant person. And he's, all that they have is just a specific type of knowledge that wasn't given to you, as if his father was really a knowledgeable person. What he's lacking is just the bit that Ibrahim has. That is the revelation. What is this? And even his father is an idol fashioner, is an idol maker. So using the right words, language matters. Now,
I didn't study and I got it.
Indeed.
But I got it. I'm lucky to have it. It hasn't come to you. Absolutely. Emphasizing the point that it's wahab from Allah. It's Allah has been gracious to me. He's given me this, and I want to share this with you. Your ego is not there. The ego is not there. So using the right words is a big thing. Often, even when today in psychology they say if you're unhappy with someone, the moment you don't use the pronoun you. Don't say you made me blah blah blah. You did this wrong. You did that wrong. You'd rather try and describe your own emotional situation. You may phrase it this way: I do not like the feeling of being left alone. I do not like the feeling of being disappointed. I was really disappointed that you did not make it to my party, whatever. Immediately, the other person would apologize. Even if they haven't done anything wrong, they would say, was I that, do I matter to you that much? If you can get someone angry, that means you really matter to them. If you can get me disappointed, that means I really have faith in you. I have hope, high hopes in you. So the moment that you use that first pronoun instead of using, you made me feel like that. You made me. You literally putting them in the defense position. I'm defending my own ego now. You haven't seen me. I was this. I was that. And you start to have no one is benefiting from this. It's actually distancing the relationship. It's not helping. So language really, really matters, and I really think the Brits use this very. It's become part of the language itself, part of the culture. That you call it today diplomacy. Like how do I phrase it? You could be boiling inside. I hope this message finds you well. And what you mean? I hope this message would help. Something like that. That's literally it, isn't it? The way you use. We when you spend more time in this culture, you develop this language yourself. And when you come out with you and you realize, I've been brainwashed. I wasn't like this. I would say things frankly and bluntly. So it's a Quranic thing to be gentle, make your point. No one is against making your point. Absolutely. Ibrahim alayhi salam is having a very tough conversation. It's his father. He's not escaping. He's actually facing a situation where he's facing it with wisdom, with gentleness, observing the boundaries. That is wisdom. An embodiment of wisdom.
Ibrahim alayhi salam. Naam, yeah, Ibrahim.
One thing that I found striking was that it shows that no matter what point you are, the guidance is always available to you. It's just up to the person whether they accept the guidance or not. So in this case, it was the son giving the guidance of Allah to his father, but the father chose to reject it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never left the world empty of guidance. But just up to us what to pick. You know, the word for one of the words for ayah in the Quran, for the word ayah in the Quran, literally, the best translation for it is not a miracle, but rather a sign. So the signs that Allah has left in the world are really too many that you can't escape. And the sign indicates a signature. That is Allah's, as if Allah had left His signature on the mountains. Go and look at the mountains. You'll find my signature there. Go and look at the, animals. You will find my signature in those animals. Go and look at humans, how they have been created. My signature is there. So you end up with signs. Those signs indicate that there is someone who signs things. Those signs go back to that signer, so to speak. Absolutely. Ahmed.
I'm not sure if I'm right with this one.
You are right.
everything لا تعبد الشيطان. I was just wondering why is it لا تعبد الشيطان لا تعبد الأصنام. And I was wondering maybe the reason could be that the reason the father is beyond Islam is more meaning how because he is he makes idols, so it could be more that his business is going to be disrupted by that, or so it's more beyond he's doing this for Ahwat rather than.
Interesting. That's a very interesting point, yeah. لا تعبد الشيطان. Don't worship the shaitan. How does shaitan come about? You would expect the Quran to be saying لا تعبد الأصنام. Don't worship the idols. But Ibrahim says don't worship the shaitan. The world is filled with so many intermediaries. But you have to always be careful that there is a big guy. That big guy wouldn't come to you in a very clear way. He would always use those means, be it idols, be it this, be it that. So when you get someone's eyes to observe this end point, you wake up. Why am I using those means? Why am I using those intermediaries? They lead me to this. Very dangerous. Absolutely. Yes, Karim. Some people, after Ibrahim was saved from the fire, they did believe in him. Definitely. They were so little, though. They were so few, sorry. Yeah. Yes, Anne.
I find it interesting how Ibrahim says, I fear the punishment, basically concerned about his father. And at that point, it contrasts immediately with his dad saying, how dare you reject me, and then also threatening harm. It's like one person's like concerned for the harm, and at that point is when Ibrahim's dad is introduced, and it doesn't matter if his son's harm. For him, it doesn't matter if he stones his son to death. But I just find it interesting. I also find it interesting how Ibrahim had 5 ayahs, reasoning, and that's immediately stopped by one, rejection, and then it goes back to Ibrahim's forgiveness and mercy. I just thought the length of it also was interesting.
What a wonderful observation, Ani. that says a lot how a Muslim, what a Muslim should be. In today's Muslim world, one of the most common ideas is that there is, I don't know if it's what to call it. Like people, there is this sense of willingness, or that sense of obsession with limiting the people who would get into paradise. It's only this person, only that, only this group, only that group. So instead of wishing good for the people, I wish you really become a good person that you may escape Allah. That's why I end up saying, I am the only one who is receiving this, I am the only one who is receiving that. And here I'm not talking about theology, I'm talking about the heart of the believer. Your interest should always be, what efforts do I make so that I may get to soften the heart of this person. If I come to you and say, if you don't do this, you kind of, what I'm trying to say. Like, all I'm concerned with is I am the only one who's going to paradise, not you. It's my group, not your group. Ibrahim is not saying that. Ibrahim is he's not mentioning himself actually. He is showing how concerned he is. And that tells a lot about his psychology, his heart, where his heart is. I'm really wishing and hoping that, hoping guidance for you. And instead of, it's a very fine line between being filled with mercy and being filled with love and being filled with hatred. You could be hating someone, okay, what is Ibrahim? If I'm asking you what is Ibrahim's approach to his father, is it he's hating? If I'm telling you, what do you think of this description? Ibrahim hates his father because his father is a disbeliever. Do you think this applies here? It doesn't. But Ibrahim is so sad that his father is choosing the wrong choice. That is the heart of the believer. So you're rather interested and obsessed with getting people into the right track rather than being arrogant or being, bragging that I am the one who's in the right track. So yes, his son Ibrahim, his father is saying, I'm stoning you, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and Ibrahim his interest is different. Yes. Yeah. Alaykum salam.
Yes, so is it? I was wondering whether Allah wrote the Quran in this way to appeal maybe to people who were leaning towards poetry a lot at the time, poetry in Islam, or maybe it's a way to convince, whether the beauty of the writing is a way to convince people, or is it to memorize? It has also benefits for memorization.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nadine. Yeah, absolutely. Argument from language, so to speak, argument from literature, how the Quran uses those expressions to appeal to the people, definitely. A people who, Arabic language is the philosophy of the Arabs, as in, that is what they know, that is what they go by. So appealing to them, using the language they use in its highest form. There is not a single book under the sun that is as poetic as the Quran. So again, yes, absolutely, appealing to the people by the usage of this language. Definitely. Yes?
I have a question.
No, sure.
Thank you. mean, as the topic is on regarding argumentation, I was wondering, and this might shed light on your project. At least for myself, of course, I won't plagiarize. I think most of us use the verses of the Quran usually as an argument from authority. How can we use the Quran as an argument from evidence? We say the Quran said that, and therefore I think it reduces the authenticity of our argument.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm sure we have to move to a certain level where we use the Quran as
Please read the article when it comes out. It discusses this literally in this word. Lima وَلَعَلَّكُمْ. Those two words. The way we use the Quran, we often use the question of kaifa. How do we pray? How do we give zakah? So you evade the first principles. You're not looking at the first principles. You're actually moving into the subject. And all you want to do is like a machine. I want to do this. How do I make sure I do this right? When you should be beginning with, why should I pray? And the Quran is filled with this. I mean, part of my research at the moment is working on this, identifying the use of the Quranic usages of la'allakum and the Quranic usages of lima, and to literally come up with those different usages of arguments, logical, empirical, authority, first principles, and so lima wa la'allakum are significant parts of this. Lima, how many times does the Quran use lima? Very frequent. How does it? When did it choose? Kaifa? Did the Quran ever, even though the Quran speaks of salah, aqim salata li dhikri. So, pray so that you may, again, answer the question of lima. You may remember me. كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. You fast so that you may become mindful. لن ينال الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم. When you slaughter your animals, it's not, it does benefit Allah in any way. What benefits you gain taqwa. The whole concept of ibadah in the Quran. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لماذا؟ لعلكم تتقون. That is the Quran giving us the rationale behind the whole concept of ibadah. لعلكم, so that you may. As if there is a question, why should we worship? Why should we pray? The Quran assumes us asking the question of lima. Even if it doesn't say it explicitly in every situation, it's always an implicit question. If I'm telling you like this is, I'm asking you to do this so that you may, it means someone was asking. Or someone should be asking, why should I pray? Why should I do zakah? Why should I do this? Inna as-salata tanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Why should I pray? Because it does this, because it does that. So one of the key tools I'm working on is identifying the tools through which we can really understand the Quran in this way. Allahu A'lam. That brings us, Ahmad, do you have any? Okay, no problem. So the end of the discussion, it's the Isha time. So we'll continue the conversation next week with the story of Musa alayhi salam. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مُوسَى. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.
مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني